We should wait for her because she's organizing.
Okay, Inna, I had a connection problem.
Yeah.
Inna, are you listening?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Then you can start if you want, just to briefly introduce yourself also. So we agreed that you have 20 minutes each to talk. 20, even 25, because the speaker of Bangladesh, Tariq Chaudhry, is not there. So you can.
No, Tariq Chaudhry is here. Tariq is here.
Where is he?
Mr. Tariq, he just said it to me. Is it Tariq or someone else? I think
it's Faishal.
No, no,
Tariq is not.
Not here. Not here.
No,
Not here.
not there.
Okay, so Zhiguang.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Zhiguang, you can give your presentation and you have 20 minutes time to give your presentation.
Even 25, because there are so...
Between 20 and 25, you can take,
That's very generous. Thank you. And it's a great pleasure to virtually meet everyone here, particularly on this occasion. And also, this is the lunar calendar New Year. This is lunar calendar New Year's Eve. So I would wish everyone a very happy New Year, and hopefully the next year will be a much better one than this.
Thank you. Same to you.
And it's a great pleasure to be part of this group and talk about, on this occasion, the 60 years anniversary of the NAM formally inauguration in 1961. It is also a great pleasure to talk about this very event and China's involvement in this particular initiative in such a turmoil and a very exciting, probably be a better, horrible word, but a very interesting time of year. So my presentation will be, the focus of my presentation will be twofold. One is to address the conference question, which is the reason why and or why not, in the case of China, a certain country participated or didn't participate in a NAM initiative. And also the second aspect of my second focus of my talk would be the much more important one, I believe, relevant to today's work. They talk about the contemporary relevance of the continuation of the non-alignment initiative. The first question. China didn't participate in the non-alignment movement in 1961 when it was firstly inaugurated. However, China did send a congratulation letter stating that, particularly written by Zhou Enlai, the then Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs and Chinese Prime Minister. He stated in his support letter, wishes the meeting will be a new contribution to the Afro-Asian and the Latin American people's vocation of striving for and defending national independence and anti-imperial invasion and intervention, resistance against new and old colonialism, and defense of global peace. This letter outlined the continuous interests of China and the policy towards the Afro-Asian and Latin America solidarity movement. And from 1960s and onwards, it has been repeatedly mentioned the importance of the solidarity movement in various meetings of Zhou Enlai when he received foreign delegations. In 1973, Zhou Enlai famously, when meeting a delegation from Mali, Zhou Enlai famously provided an explanation of why China didn't formally participate in the non-alignment movement. He stated that because China was signed a quasi-alignment agreement with Soviet Union in 1950, the Sino-Soviet Friendship Agreement. So China was officially in the form of alignment, therefore renders China unqualified for being part of this alignment movement. However, soon as this statement was verified, particularly after the 1991, the dissolvement of the Soviet Union. In 1992, China immediately after this dissolvement of the Soviet Union, which consequently leave China outside, enables China to be a non-alignment alignment country. China filed the application and joined the NAM in 1992 as a observer. Now, here is a brief summary of the Chinese attitude and involvement with the NAM movement. However, I want to argue that it is important not to see NAM as a single political international organization initiative, but more importantly, to place NAM in a long-lasting initiative of a solidarity movement coming from the third world countries. Initially, it started with Afro-Asian solidarity movement, but quickly in the 1960s, it expanded to tricontinentalism and continues on in the until today. Now, this very initiative of solidarity movement among the third world people started from the formally started from the Bandung conference in 1955. The principle of this movement argues that it is important to achieve independence, not only politically, but also culturally and economically through mutual aid, cooperation, and respect of individual sovereignty. Now, these principles functions continuously as the backbone of all the solidarity movement, ranging from the Bandung Conference to the Afro-Asian Peace Conference in the late 1950s and 60s, and the tricontinentalism, and also, of course, the NAM initiative started in 1961. The reason behind it is that the solidarity movement argues for identifies the primary concern of the third world people. The first concern is the concern of the unequal international order inflicted by the presence of imperialism. Now, we need a further definition of what constitutes as imperialism, in a sense, in a nutshell, which is relevant to the third world nations. Imperialism is not only just a political presence of the imperial power, but also a monopoly, capitalist monopoly power that penetrates every level of the society, both within the third world countries as well as across the world. So, which means that this is a much more important concern for the third world people as well as the world oppressed people in general. And arguably, this very concern is still the major problem of the contemporary world's problem. Now, the transnational capitalist monopoly, the implication of the transnational capitalist monopoly to the third world country is the third world country had been in a constant underdeveloped stage. an argument was made in the 1980s that that it is the imperialist expansion, new and old colonialist imperial expansion that underdeveloped, using this word as a verb, underdeveloped the third world countries. I want to push that argument even further, which is the underdevelopment stage, the expansion of the capitalist monopoly underdeveloped the whole world, including some of the oppressed people in the first world and second world countries. So, and this underdeveloped status leads to a severe problem for the third world independence movement and challenge, a severe challenge and problem of the third world independent movement. The third world, as we identified, that the Bandung Conference specifically stated that the independence of the third world nations is not only just a gaining political sovereign, but more importantly, achieving cultural and economic decolonization. And the initiative of achieving economic and cultural decolonization requires a much more fundamental transformation and social liberation in the newly formed, in the newly independent colony and the semi-colonial world. And it is important to notice that although many of the third world countries, that's a former colony and semi-colony, have achieved their political independence in the mid of 20th century, however, their economic and cultural independence, liberation, has not yet been completed. So therefore, we can argue that the third world solidarity movement is not a movement that has already been done, and it's in the past tense, and we need to, we tend to have a very pessimistic attitude towards this very initiative. No, what I want to argue is the third world solidarity movement has not yet finished. It is an unfinished project, which is, and the element of being unfinished is manifested in many of the status, in many of the third world countries, belated economic and cultural development. Now, conventionally, in the European or Western oriented, Western centric narrative of development, the whole notion of development was hardwired with the notion of economic advancement. Now, the economic advancement, or as we know, famously coined in the 1960s, in the height of the Cold War, in the height of the Cold War ideological competition, the notion of economic development it should be designed and bestowed upon the third world countries, was in the backbone of the American modernization theory. Interestingly, the very modernization theory was proposed by the very person, Rostow, the very person who invented carpet bombardment in Vietnam. So therefore, we know, by looking back to the time of the political and economic struggle of the NUM country against the superpowers, we need to not only just look at this historical period as a political event, but more importantly, as an ideological revolution. We need to understand and revisit our vocabulary in describing some of the key issues that is very much relevant to today's world. For example, the very notion of development, the very notion of economic modernization, and more importantly, the very notion of industrialization. Now, for the third world countries, many of the, pretty much all the third world countries and their belated and underdeveloped status was caused by this belated stage of industrialization. Now, industrialization has been hijacked it in the 1960s and 70s, and more importantly, after the fall of the Soviet Union in the 1990s by the neoliberal discourse as a form of purely economic transformation. That purely, which applies a very rigid structuralist attitude in understanding the importance of industrialization as being simply setting up factories and rendering many of the people formerly agricultural employers into the status of industrial workers. However, this is not necessarily the case. At least this is not the case experienced by the large third world people. The notion of industrialization suggested that it is not only the economic transformation, but also the economic transformation will lead the whole third world people into achieving its own political subjectivity and agency, to become more educated and liberated, and therefore seize the control of their own fate, rather than being constantly subjected to the transnational capitalist exploitation and hardwired into the status of constantly being the suppliers of primary sources and cheap labor. So therefore, how do we achieve this status in a belated and underdeveloped world, largely known as the third world in the 1950s context? The 1950s Bandung Conference proposed a solution, which is mutual respect of sovereignty, and also cooperation, mutual aid, and collaboration in a equal and non-capitalist approach. Now, this, for example, the NUM country, as well as China at the time, rejected the very notion of foreign direct investment, or the foreign direct investment that extract resources from the underdeveloped world and reject it back into the developed country. The notion of aid, economic aid, should not have any sort of political agenda attached to it. The economic aid should also directly be benefiting to the local development and benefiting the local people's liberation and self-liberation. So we could see that over the past 2 decades, the neoliberal capitalist monopoly has penetrated into many areas of the world, including the third world and the first and second world alike. Has strengthened, not weakened, but strengthened that status of inequality because of the extracting of the different mental and labor and natural resources from all areas. So therefore, the NUM initiative calling for an alternative way of achieving global development, of achieving industrialization in the underdeveloped world, should be of great inspiration to today's world. And that is my main points of today's discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zhiguang. You have finished your paper very timely, and it was a very informative and thoughtful presentation. So I congratulate you on your presentation.
Yeah. Then we'll have a discussion at the end of all presentations, if you agree.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Even from the from the participants who don't present anything. So if they agree, they can ask questions to all the speakers at the end of the session. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Yin. It was very, I agree with Nisar. It was a very challenging and very interesting presentation. I also have some questions for you. Ambikesh, are you ready?
Ambikesh, yeah.
for your presentation.
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
then you can go
Can you
ahead.
introduce yourself? Ambikesh,
Yes.
can
Yes,
you
yes.
introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
You are from where?
I'm Dr. Ambikesh Kumar Tirpathi, now Assistant Professor in Department of Gandhi and Peace Studies, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Motihari, Bihar.
Varanasi.
No, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Motihari, Bihar, sir.
Motihari. Okay.
I read you very well, sir.
Oh, Sanjeev Sharma.
Yeah,
is there.
Sanjeev Sharma.
Oh, he's my friend. Yeah.
I know that. I know. I listen you a lot of times, many more, sir, Professor Nisar Ul-Haq, sir. And thank you so much, sir, for being here. And I also
Good to see you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I start my presentation since Darvi sent me 4 questions to deal with this paper. First was the why did your country, being to belong to the country who is the part of non-alignment movement. So there are 4 questions to me. Why did your country decide to join NAM? The second one is what are the advantages to be NAM member according to the national interest of your country? And what is the contribution of your country to the development of non-alignment movement? The last one is what is the future perspective of NAM according to the national interest of your country? So I will take some time of 15 minutes almost, and will deal with all these questions.
Right.
First, yes, sir.
Yeah. You can carry on.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, sir. The first is why did your country decide to join the NAM? Everybody know when India became free, the world scenario was quite changed, and it was the time of Cold War. The Second World War is almost finished, and barely after finishing, barely within the 2 years, India got its freedom, and the world politics was divided into 2 blocks. The first one was led by the US under the capitalist ideology, and another was the USSR under the communist ideology. India under Nehru didn't wish to become the part of any bloc and adopted a new policy which is known as non-alignment policy. Non-alignment has been regarded as the most important feature of India's foreign policy till today. Non-alignment aimed to maintaining the national independence in foreign policy by not joining any military alliances formed by the USA and USSR in the aftermath of the Second World War. Non-alignment was neither a naturality, nor a non-involvement, nor isolation. It was a dynamic concept, which means not commitment to any military bloc, but taking an independent stand on international issues according to the merit of each case. The policy of non-alignment won by the supporters among the developing countries, as it provided an opportunity to them for protecting their sovereignty, as also retaining their freedom of action during the tension-ridden Cold War period. Under this policy, India has chosen an independent path for foreign policy and become the natural leader of newly independent Afro-Asian countries. In such an atmosphere of Cold War bloc politics between the 2 powers, USA and USSR. In justifying this policy, Nehru observed India is too big country. India is going to be and is bound to be a country that wants to play an important role in the world affairs while remaining quite apart from power blocks. We in better position, we in better position to cast our weight at the right moment in favor of peace, and meanwhile our relation can become as close as possible in the economic and other domain with countries with which we can easily develop. The policy of non-alignment was based on 5 principles of Panchsheel, which directed international conduct. These principles, which were formulated in 1954, were mutual respect of each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, non-interference in each other's military and internal affairs, mutual non-aggression, equality and mutual benefit, and finally peaceful coexistence and economic cooperation. So the aim of this movement was to visualizing or establishing the peace in that tension ridden period where the two great powers were in Cold War. Next is what are the advantages to be a member, a NAM member according to the national interest of your country. So non-alignment is a doctrinal foundation of India's foreign policy, serving her national interest even in post-Nehruvian period. But the end of Cold War and the emergence of unipolar world politics that has changed the entire scenario, and there has been a debate suddenly emerged that the non-alignment movement has been irrelevant now. The end of bipolarity made a very foundation of non-alignment movement irrelevant. Scholars argued that the NAM was a consequence of bipolar world order, and now the world is unipolar, so non-alignment with whom? With the end of bipolar world order, the policy of non-alignment have lost their relevance and significance according to some scholars, but it has different kind of relevance and different perspective. And it is a challenge to the Indian foreign policy planner to make the NAM more relevant than it was ever before. I find that India, in being the member of non-alignment movement, India could be able to protect her independence and sovereignty, emerged as the third bloc, not bloc in that particular sense when the two bloc politics was that time, but emerged as the third bloc in bipolar political tension and successfully united the many newly independent countries and stopped the power rivalry between the two power blocks in which could be intensified. Also, NAM become the second largest organization of the world after United Nations, and India realized that it can play a creative role in international politics. There are a lot of things the previous speaker already told, so there is no need to repetitions what the role NAM can play in the international politics. But the structural position, basically the NAM was formulated to fight with the unjust environment of global world order. So many the structural position and the unjust global order already still remain. So the relevance of that particular movement is still we can visualize. What is the contribution of your country to the development of NAM? Was the first question. India is among the founder countries. India played an important role in the multilateral movements of colonies and newly development countries that want to participate in non-alignment movement. The countries place in national diplomacy, its significant size and economic growth turned India into into one of the leader of the non-alignment movement. I think those who have their interest in contemporary history of world politics must know the India's contribution into the NAM and different aspects of NAM. What India had done with Yugoslavia and Indonesia, and later so many countries who joined this. So I skip this. Now I'm coming on the future prospects of NAM according to the national interest. That is the last point of my talk. Future prospects. Actually, the foreign policy, any country formulate their foreign policy to serve their national interest, for the long term or the short term national interest. NAM, as I earlier told, NAM is the basic foundation of Indian foreign policy till today. Even after Nehru, it was the vision of Nehru and some other like-minded idealist leader of his time, his contemporary times. But after the Nehru, this movement, this organization, still in position to bring the some, you know, a significant change in the world politics. Till today, this organization, this movement and movement had their you know, significance and served to the best served to the national interest of the not only my country, India, but all member country, those who are in this movement. So many since the, you know, what the earlier speaker told about the developed nations, the penetrating in different way in the second world and third world, and other different challenges that which are coming from which comes from basic you know, um, like world institution like IMF, World Bank, and etc. are also, their policies are also you know, almost goes against to the third world countries and all. Naturally, non-alignment movement is the leader of third world countries. Addressing in these questions, addressing in these challenges, NAM has their significant role. And the one most important thing, UN has UN is, it's very important time to bring some reforms in the structure of United Nations, and the most of the countries who the part of member of UN is also the part of NAM. So by their grouping and strong voices, the NAM can bring such kind of change in United Nations. Apart from this, in North-South dialogue, in environmental issues, and the issue of third world countries' developmental issues, NAM has their you know, own kind of importance. So this is the my take on from the India side. Thank you for peaceful listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambikesh. It was a good and elaborate and analytical deliberation of the NAM. And for this, I congratulate you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, Marzia, do you want to say something? Yeah.
No, I'm just inviting the next speaker,
Yeah.
Faishal
Yeah.
Aminuddin, to talk about Indonesia.
From Indonesia, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marzia and Professor Ul-Haq. Firstly, I would like to introduce about myself. My name is Faishal Aminuddin, and I'm working as an assistant professor in Department of Political Science at University of Brawijaya in Malang, Indonesia. One of my colleagues was Professor Nisar student in India.
Oh,
Habibi.
who is that? Who is that?
His name is Habibi.
Habibi. Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I studied comparative politics at University of Heidelberg in Germany, and I wrote much about civil-military relation and comparative politics, especially about Southeast Asia. Based on email from Darwish, yeah, actually, what I have to say is only a note about Indonesia and non-alignment movement, because in accordance with the request in the term of reference, it proposes to tell, and not just to tell, and not to critical review on its relationship between Indonesia and NAM. So this note comes from what I've summarized from general information. So I don't have much to say, and it will probably take between 10 and 15 minutes. Okay, first of all, good morning and afternoon. Good morning, and afternoon, and thanks to all people. And
well, you have, sorry if I interrupt you, Faishal, but you have up to 25 minutes actually, because we have less speakers, so we decided to give you more time. Anyway, and apart from that, criticism is accepted, even if the structure of your presentation is rather not, I can't say rigid, but you can criticism is welcomed anyway. A critical, you know.
Yeah, well, I try, but I'm not prepared for it. Okay.
Okay, it is up to you to take how much time you want. But not beyond 25. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thanks to all people and their institution who organized this great conference. And hopefully all of you are given health and this COVID-19 pandemic will be end soon. In this occasion, I will share several notes about the topic of 60 years after Belgrade from Indonesian perspective. As we know, Belgrade Conference of held September 1961 had main target was to protect peace and reject colonialism and imperialism. And this issue was still on the main agenda at the NAM conference afterwards. For example, in Cairo conference in 1964, and Indonesia was one of the founding members of NAM with a major role of Sukarno era after the 1955 Asia-African Conference in Bandung as the embryo of NAM. This is, of course, as a newly independent country, Indonesia has strong reason to be actively involved in the international stage to build solidarity among post-colonial nations in order to have a strong support and giving a wide spirit to end this practice. A major campaign through international organization is absolutely necessary. And that's why, as other NAM member countries are politically in a marginal position and economically also weak, NAM has become a quite effective tool in building diplomacy, in span of in range of politics, culture to economy. But after 60 years from Belgrade, in terms of quantity, the number of NAM members is getting bigger and bigger, and is now around 120 countries. However, NAM solidarity is not well institutionalized. That is a fact. We still see disputes, military conflicts, human rights violations, poverty, and even serious ecological damage. For example, like Indonesia, selling their forests to a North American country, to West European country. And NAM, as an organization, has not been able to fully resolve this problem. So the cooperation in the economic issues or sector has not been seen to be mutually beneficial. Its NAM country still has a high level of dependence to the rich countries and maintains a stronger intensity of multilateral cooperation with them. This is what causes NAM to have a bias, or their perspective is biased when the bigger countries, so for example, United States, the United Kingdom, on outside the member who have much greater power impose their will. For example, military conflict in Middle East, in Afghanistan, and everywhere. And as part of NAM, generally, Indonesia gets 3 types of benefit. This is for my opinion. The first benefit is Indonesia can build image of being a champion of anti-colonialism, led to an increase in Indonesia's bargaining position against the domination of the United States in Southeast Asia. This benefit, simultaneously, this benefit, it could also build a strategic partnership with the Soviet Union and happen in the period between 1950 to the 1960s during Sukarno period. This made it easier for Indonesia to get access to weapons from both parties, from United States and also from Soviet Union, were used to overcome the various separatist conflicts that had sprung up in the country between that year. That's the first benefit. And the second benefit, Indonesia has received support for its various strategic interests in United Nations Forum. This happened in the period from 1970 to the 1980, which Indonesia was able to build international cooperation in strengthening food security, especially with African countries, with Zambia, Ghana, Nigeria. In addition, trading diplomacy, which involved, for example, the entrance of investment in natural resource management, modernization of agricultural infrastructure and technology, also related to the issue of the political issue of the annexation of Timor-Leste. So that fact, the annexation of Timor-Leste, does not appear to be detrimental to Indonesia. There is no huge issue about the annexation of Timor-Leste in 1975, with support from Australia, New Zealand, United States in United Nations Forum. And the third is the current, starting from 1990s to the present. Indonesia has received a wider space not only for its commodity market in global trade, but also effort to transfer technology and exchange for educational and cultural mission. In making its contribution to NAM, Indonesia has traditionally managed cooperation affairs through single window policy from a foreign ministry. This ministry is actively participating in NAM events both inside the UN and outside, and also involved in various kinds of lobbying, diplomacy, to the delivery of technical assistance between countries. As with other members' contribution, also direct and visible, is when a country holds a chairmanship position. I mean, the cooperation managed by the foreign ministry is going as a routine program. But for extraordinary program, as with other member, a contribution direct and visible is when a country holds a chairmanship position. For example, now Azerbaijan having armored conflict with Armenia, and Baku now holding a chairmanship position of NAM. So there is no particular or specific problem to get support from another NAM members. Besides being more active in taking action, it can also maximize support from members. And this same experience was seen when Indonesia became chairman, who actively initiated dialogue and peace in the case of Mindanao in the Philippines, in the southern Philippines, around 1993 until 1995. But meanwhile, other routine contributions are carried out in the annual cooperation program of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its diplomatic network. But interestingly, to measure the non-official contribution, not much can be known. For example, from how much mobility between citizens. I came to Iran, I came to another part of NAM countries, I still need a visa. There is no free mobility between citizens. Or cooperation in the fields of education and social culture, which is carried out intensively, and to what extent can the result be known? This is also the problem, to measure how effectively the cooperation between or among non-members to measure. For Indonesia, concrete roles and its contribution can make after the establishment of the NAM CSSTC, or Center for South-South Technical Cooperation, in 2001, which also running several programs between my university and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Republic Indonesia around 2009 and 2011. This establishment, NAM CSSTC, which moved to expand and accelerate the transfer of light technology, small technology, and various advances in microeconomics tools. For example, microfinance, banking, and several technology on agriculture and animal husbandry. And this institution, CSSTC, can be called the most concrete manifestation of development cooperation within NAM. In the era of Indonesian leadership, for example, in the 1992 until 1995, which economic cooperation was described as an intensive South-South cooperation, and as well as redefining the name vision according to 1995 Cartagena Declaration. The effort that were started included cooperation in the field of poverty alleviation, strengthening small business, and using ICT, information and technology. This is what I called starting from, I think in a conference, not in Cairo, maybe in Lusaka, in Gambia, in 1974, I think, with economic cooperation starting to promote against NAM members. Another example, maybe apart from that, Indonesia also have the opportunity to provide developing countries partnership scholarship. In Indonesia, we call KNB, Kemitraan Negara Berkembang Scholarship, which providing full scholarship scheme for non-members, especially those from poor countries, mainly in Africa and post-conflict state in Middle East. We have, for example, my university have a huge number of students came from Libya, Syria, and also another country in Africa, like Gambia. In the post-Cold War, I note two interesting things, and this is contribute to Indonesian position in the global political stage. The first is multilateral cooperation is based on national interest, especially economic interests. The rise of China as a world economic power since 1980s. In turn, seen by Indonesia as an alternative strategic partner. For now, for example, trade and economic cooperation are continuously forged and strengthened. At the same time, the tension about a dispute in the South China Sea issue, even which is always high, doesn't make it an important issue for resistance on the ground in a national sovereignty issue. There is no problem in Indonesia with the South China Sea because Indonesia have a great trading partnership with China. That was the first one. And the second one is, after the colonialism era left or gone, various countries were faced with domestic problems such as civil conflicts, separatism, and economic instability. In a multipolar world political structure, each country has the ability to make more choices. For example, Indonesia have a strong hold relationship with China. At the same time, the Ministry of Defense also have a chance and a great opportunity to make approach to United States in case we try to buy some air fighter, for example. So each country has the ability to make more choices. From these two things above, Indonesia's position has changed. In the period 1950 until 1960s, Indonesia's foreign policy was free and active. We call it bebas aktif. This means that they are free in determining the choice of partner for cooperation, but are active in pursuing world peace. This doctrine, this political doctrine, lasted until the end of the 1990s and experienced to shift to become thousands of friends, zero enemies in the democratization era in the post-1998, which means that all political risks that will be faced by Indonesia in the global political arena should be minimized wherever possible. These two doctrines of foreign policy in the global political stage can be called as passive pragmatism. In fact, this is a portrait for another NAM countries in taking a position in securing themselves among the important world powers between Western Europe, North America, Russia, and China. Let's start to remembering during Sino-India War, which also problematic for Nehru to approaching United States to have international support. In the latest development, I see a number of keywords to explain Indonesia's hope for NAM. This is actual official statement. First stated by President Joko Widodo. He thought it is important to translate the meaning of political solidarity into more concrete collaboration. This actually applies not only to the context of the accessibility of developing countries to vaccines and treatment to end the COVID-19 pandemics. As can be seen, access to better vaccine is only dominated by rich countries, and more of them are competing to save and appear selfish with what is called vaccine nationalism. So the key point is political solidarity into more concrete collaboration.
Thank you. Thank you for your...
Wait.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Secondly, in a speech by Minister of Foreign Affairs, Retno Marsudi, yeah, during Baku meeting, which emphasized strengthening the spirit of multilateral cooperation, regulating the global economy through strong and balanced partnership, and increasing internal cooperation through concrete collaboration, so that NAM does not become just a talk shop organization. I tried to summarize. There are three urgent things to do in clarifying the future of NAM. The first is eliminating institutional problems by changing their ceremonial leadership model, as happened so far. NAM needs to be a strong multilateral collaboration with a semi-permanent at minimum on its organizational system. Second, accelerate the pace of social, cultural, and educational and technological science mobility among NAM members, increasing the number of study scholarship, cooperation between universities, transfer of technology between strategic institutions, and ensuring high mobility can be done when each country opens its border. And third, the NAM must have a global policy platform derived from the principles that are continuously updated according to the times. Without this platform, its member country will define its own national interests, which is often counterproductive to the interest of solidarity among NAM members. I think it's this is my notes that I can convey, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Faisal, for
Thank
a
you very
very
much.
illuminating and informative paper, and I congratulate you for this presentation. So, Marzia, please.
Are there any questions from the participants?
Is there any other presenter? No presenter.
No, there are no presenters.
No presenter. Right. So, is there any question
From the participants?
I think we should have a kind of round table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
no
we can do
problem.
that. We can do that.
We have a time. Yeah.
You have time. We can open up a discussion for at least half an hour or so, because we finished really earlier.
Early, yeah.
So Nisar,
yeah, I think that we can take half an hour, so we can finish by 4 o'clock. And if there is a round table and we can have certain discussion, it would be wonderful.
Actually, sir, I think we can also benefited by your experience in this particular area of international studies. So we had a great chance to listen to you once again, and also the Marzia is also I hope a good scholar, hopefully, on this issue. So
yeah.
So we have.
I think that it's a tremendous contribution of the non-alignment, and particularly when it came into existence, that the world was really not in a position to assert itself. And all the NAM countries, they try to assert themselves at the international level. So the idea of the NAM, yeah.
I'm Terus Tamburan from Indonesia. I have one questions.
Yeah.
It was very interesting from our colleagues from Brawijaya. One point he raised is about concrete collaborations among these non-aligned movement countries. Because I have been wondering for a long time, after all these years, what have been concrete collaborations among, let's say, African countries within Africa, or between African countries and Asian developing countries. I try since I'm involved in this conference, I think since early 2000 by Professor Darwish.
Yeah.
I try to create, to encourage collaboration among people that I met in the conference.
Wonderful.
It doesn't matter, it's not necessarily at the national level, but between universities, between us, among us. Concrete studies, or at the end we can try to provide our result to our governments with respect to, you say, actual important issues, including warming, climate problem, and so on, economic problem, poverty. But until now, unfortunately, no response. So we meet every 5 years. Like now, we meet after Bandung 5 years ago. I think we are going to meet again in October. Yeah, I think in Surabaya, maybe
Indonesia
by Zoom again. But what have been the concrete collaboration? After we finish tomorrow, Saturday, then we forget each other. That's my point. We should need some. Because until now, many developing countries, including Indonesia, are have more projects with European countries, with Japan, with China, many investment with the US, of course. Then, for instance, Indonesia with African countries, or Indonesia with India, for instance, is still very low compared to Indonesia with China. But China, as my colleagues from Brawijaya mentioned, China was not involved in the first of this non-aligned movement. Maybe the motivation now for China is more economic than political aim of this movement. That is my issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that there should be more and more collaboration among the countries today, and also the collaboration among the participants. So the participants' email is always there. They can have a talk with each other on their mail, and then it will create a good collaboration among themselves. So I think that it's a good idea and a good point you raised in this. Is there any other person which wants to say something? Or Marzia, you want to make some comment on it?
Marzia, please unmute your mic. Unmute your mic, please. Unmute your mic. Your mic is muted.
Your mic is not working. Yeah.
Your microphone, Professor Marzia.
Oh, yes, sorry. Sometimes I forget to turn it on. Anyway, yes, thank you. I had comments for all presentations, but I like also to, to accept Ambikesh request to start a small round table and we can discuss all together. I can just, comment. I give you my comments on the three presentations, but I like also to share the discussion, perhaps even with the other participants to this small session. Anyway, I think that especially Yin and Faishal, they highlighted some shortcomings, if I can define them like this, of the NAM, especially Faishal. You repeated several times that more and more effective collaboration between the NAM countries should be required, and you highlighted a very specific point when you said that, okay, there is a solidarity, at least from the theoretical point of view, among the NAM members, but many contradictions are there, like conflicts, wars, even between NAM members sometimes. So that's one of the main, according to me, one of the main contradictions within the NAM movement. So, okay, solidarity is there, but also many contradictions are still there. And when you talk about cooperation, economic cooperation, NAM is increasingly becoming an economic cooperation platform. And you said that it's also the arena for the economic interest of specific countries like India or China or so on, even Vietnam perhaps. So don't you think that there's a increasingly economic function of NAM is somehow overlapping with other organizations, like for instance ASEAN, which are even more effective, no? Because if there are political contradictions within NAM, as you correctly pointed out, conflicts between NAM members, within ASEAN, these conflicts are not there. So why within ASEAN conflicts are not there? I'm talking about Asia, obviously. Why among ASEAN countries? No, military conflicts are not there. ASEAN is a peaceful area, but when you take the NAM, the situation changes. Why they are not able to establish a similar climate among NAM countries? And then for Yin, sorry, you said that, okay, you also stressed the importance of solidarity between countries, which is still going on. And you spoke about the surviving monopoly of the imperialistic countries, capitalist countries, developed countries, you know. And then you said that industrialization, a different model of industrialization should be developed between NAM countries. That I would like that you, do you have an idea about what kind of industrialization? Because industrialization is a very crucial point, a crucial aspect from the economic point of view, especially for developing countries. So what kind of industrialization? Because nowadays in the West, there is a strong debate about industrialization, capitalism, industrialization, environment. So do you have an idea about what kind of industrialization we are talking about? Okay. And finally, for Ambikesh, you say that non-alignment is still one of the founding values of Indian foreign policy, if I got you correctly. But don't you think, I mean, don't you think that India shifted, diverted from non-alignment, especially if you look at the stronger and strongest alliance with the United States, especially during Trump's administration? I'm referring to the Indo-Pacific strategy, the role that India acquired in South Asia, the changes in the balances between, for instance, Pakistan and India, and the relationship with the United States, and with the United States allies like the Arab monarchies and Israel also. So how far, how can India, how can India, you know, put together these two tendencies, being one of the leading NAM countries and being also a very strong US ally? I mean, we have to see what will happen with the Biden administration, but during Trump's administration, Trump was a very controversial president anyway. Okay, thank you. Sorry for having talked too much.
No, it's actually my my reluctant presentation and the rhetorical presentation shared the Indian perspective about the NAM. We are actually discussing NAM is against to the military alliances, but India also engaged so many military alliances also. So there is different questions about this. Really, India, we have to think about, and we need to redefine.
No, Marzia actually asking, is there any shift in India's policy from earlier, which was a founder member of the non-alignment? These days, it has been a shift since India has become a closer ally of the United States of America, particularly during the Trump administration. Actually, so do you, as a scholar, do you see any shift?
Actually, sir, I think there are few more, security treaties is remain to be the part of, NATO. India is almost like NATO allies of US, almost like.
NATO is a very specific, alliance that.
So there is a huge shift, sir. But it was the rhetorical to say that India is a founder member of the movement. But the Indian foreign policy become a more pragmatic and practical orientation.
This is keeping in view the interest of the nation.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would like to invite to Professor Ul-Haq, chair of this session, for his.
I think there are, because Marzia has asked number of questions to every speaker. So I think the other speaker should respond. Yeah.
Respond.
I mean, considering the first question is addressed to Faishal, would would it be appropriate for Faishal to respond first, and then I'll chip in, because I also have something to say about the question regarding the importance of NOM and in comparison with the other third world alliances movement.
Yeah, but there is not a specific order in your replies. So if you can reply my question to you, it's not a problem. Then Faisal can answer later on if he wants.
Yeah, sure. Just to lighten up the mood. I think the question you've raised are crucial and are very important. Particularly, I like the point that you made with regarding what's the role of NOM in comparison with the other sort of third world solidarity initiatives. Now, particularly over the past 40 years, starting from the 1970s, there is a mood of pessimism with regarding the third world solidarity movement and considering it as a failed initiative. It is true, political-wise, as a political historian, I agree that if we look at those organizations, initiatives, they're all sort of ebbing away from the surface of history of international interaction. But that's not the problem of the solidarity spirit. And the reason why I state that is because that it is precisely the mentality that a certain organization should dominate a specific initiative is a fallacy. Solidarity movement in itself is a movement of equality and internationalism. So therefore, in its own, just based on its nature, it is impossible to have a solidarity movement with only one unified organization. And throughout the history, we've seen numerous amounts of attempts of achieving such a solidarity not by race, but a solidarity by historical and economic and social status, solidarity of the workers, for example, solidarity of the oppressed people, for example, and then even a solidarity movement among the religious group were, at least for a period of time, quite pronounced in promoting some of the very positive agenda in human development. So therefore, I would say instead of looking at the solidarity movement as having having the need of having a unified center, it is probably more beneficial to look at it in a very long historical trend. And having said that, I do firmly agree with your observation that NAM, in comparison with ASEAN, seems to be less effective. So it might be helpful for us to understand from an institutional and organizational perspective of why certain institutions failed, whereas the other didn't. Now, in order to answer that question, we need to definitely expand the subject of investigation. For a long time, at least after the Second World War, we tend to look at the United Nations. And before United Nations, when we talk about transnational organization, we tend to look at the League of Nations. But if we just look at those history of organizations, transnational organizations, they're the history of failure, not success. The League of Nations failed miserably for not being able to stop the rise of fascism, but it doesn't. So that makes the failure even more valuable in the in the discussion in the revisiting of human history. For example, one of the major failure. Or major reason, at least from my understanding, the major reason for the failure of the League of Nations is the failure of tackling monopoly tackling imperialism, protecting the weak and the small nations' interests, and let go of those real power politics that caused the failure of the whole initiative. The starting point of the League of Nations is brilliant. At least it was celebrated by many of the progressive intellectuals at the time. However, it was dominated by superpowers at the time. Now,
sorry, can I interrupt you? You know, you are saying right, absolutely right about the League of Nations. But can you judge from the same angle to the United Nations as well? That what is the role of the?
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I was about to come to that point. The United Nations was dominated in the 1950s by a handful of people and a handful of countries, and it was the same United Nations
Also now is dominated by a handful
Yeah,
of nations.
Absolutely.
I was afraid to say that, but yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
It's dominated by one country, by one power. Actually,
Precisely.
It's in the United States that we can say it very open. I mean, at least I say it very openly. Okay,
I mean, it is precisely this mentality that we should celebrate. I mean, say out loud, spit out the evil, spit out the problem straight away rather than sugarcoating it. So I do admire what you said, and I agree. The 50s, it was the United Nations that signed the concrete of human rights, the Universal Decree of Human Rights, that also signed the agreement to invade North Korea, to interfere in Korea. It is also the United Nations that signed the agreement to interfere into China. The United Nations signed an agreement to invade many of the African countries and Middle East. In 1958, invade Lebanon. But it was also the United Nations at the time in the 1960s, one of the main agenda of the NAM, although without the participant of China, although with the increasing tension between China and India, border tension between China and India, it was the same NAM that agreed and called for China being part of the United Nations as a counterforce. So this is the spirit that is missing. So nowadays, what is considered as danger, as I would say, is that domination of a certain power has no counterbalance. There is, that comes to the point that I want to respond to Marzia's question to me, the industrialization issue. The very idea today that portrays China as a neo-colonial and imperialist power is precisely the Cold War mentality that would very much celebrated by the US. Yes. The idea that blur the boundary between what is a social. Sorry.
I'm happy that you say it.
Great, thank you. At least I could get some support in this when talking about this very issue. I mean,
where do you live? Do you live in China?
No, I live in the UK, and I was
okay.
Whenever I said this, I would face a huge wave of
criticism. Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, that's preposterous. You are basically sending the humankind to a black hole by calling a force that tries the best to elevate poverty, tries the best to achieve an alternative version of industrialization. And calling it as a new, you're not only criticizing China, no, you are committing a crime against humanity, against all the criticism, all the bad things that caused by imperialism. And you are basically sugarcoating that past, that brutal past of imperialism. And what I want to say is the very idea of industrialization is not only just about creating a force of proletarian, creating a working class. It's not also about whatever the Trotskyists would say, the state capitalism. It is about creating the opportunity for average people to embrace a better life. And that industrialization should come with education, equal opportunity to access public health, equal opportunity to have environmental, to have a healthy environment to live in. And that cannot be achieved without mutual aid, mutual support. Why? Because we know for a fact, historically, the capitalistic primitive accumulation of capitalism started with all this exploitation of nature. And now, so therefore, they could achieve industrialization in a relatively short period of time, about 200 years, in a 200 years time. But how do we achieve that as a belated country, as an underdeveloped country? How do we achieve industrialization, have the equal say economically and politically on the international stage against the developed world, the monopoly world, but without sacrificing the human costs, as in the exploitation of the working class, the exploitation of the underdeveloped world, the exploitation of the nature? I mean, that cannot be achieved without all those sort of mutual aid, either exchange of goods or exchange or support inject of capital not coming from unregulated capitalist individual private entity, but come from an entity such as a state that has much more liability and it's subject to all the criticisms and all the regulations. And personally, if I could say out loud, I would be very happy to see a regulated state champion for all those development causes, rather than an unregulated private organization that says that the market will decide for all. So this is my...
You are clearly making the distinction between socialist and liberal perspective.
Absolutely. I think we should be brave and say
Yeah,
we need a socialist internationalism.
And yes, and you in between said that why it happens that some organization become successful and the other organization become failure. And as Marzia has asked the question that why ASEAN is successful and why NAM is not successful. So what is the reason you find it?
I'm going to tread on a very dangerous territory now.
Why?
NAM, starting from a very beginning, sort of has the problem of being dominated by several important forces that has not yet achieved its full decolonization. The decolonization, therefore, is not only, as I said in my presentation, decolonization is not guaranteed after a political independence. Decolonization should be much more fundamental. It's not just about, hey, installing a group of national bourgeois and elites who were educated in the colonial system before and just inherited the colonial constitution as its own and call it independent nation states. Independence, decolonization also needs to be domestically facing, internally facing, meaning that the society needs to decolonize once for all. The decolonization is a much more troublesome and tedious procedure that should have sort of a social liberation education movement, the movement that was hugely criticized, done by the Communist China in the 1950s and 60s, but hugely criticized by the, I hate to sound ideologist, but criticized by the capitalist world. I mean, for God's sake, even until now. I mean, how can you achieve poverty alleviation? How can you achieve education for all? How can you achieve public public health care without the support of a strong state. And arguably, it was the imperialist country that started this all. How did the UK set up its own social care system? Imperialist, strong state.
Yeah.
And how did the American did that? Imperialist, strong state, New Deal. Now Biden is calling for a New Deal. I seriously doubt he will be able to achieve that. But after all, if you can do this, if the imperialist country have all done this in their history with the sacrifice of the underdeveloped world and their own people, how can't we, the underdeveloped world, the third world countries, united together, set up our strong state and do the things ourselves without the intervention of the developed world or the monopoly powers? One last thing I want to emphasize is I do agree that there is a relationship between capitalism and the state, but I do want to emphasize that particularly in today's world, I think that it's almost like a Polanyi's argument that the integrated, that the capital is hardwired in the state power. But today it seems like the capital has reached to the stage that they want a state sovereign themselves. So it's a state, above all the states. So I would say, therefore, particularly if we see the COVID situation, the developed world, the world that we deemed as imperialist, is also subject of this kind of exploitation. Look at how many people died in those countries in America because of the incompetence of a government, because of the greediness of capital. In the States, in the UK, nobody cares about private cares. Nobody cares about the care home people. And these are the people who are rendered victims of privatization initiatives in the 1990s, championed by those neoliberal advocates, politicians. It's like, that tells the lies to the world people that the market will solve human problem once for all. But now it is again in 2010, 2016, it is these people, exact the same people that revoke their lives and go back to protectionism. For God's sake! Sorry, I'm a bit pissed off because I'm trapped indoors for a whole year.
Thank you, Mr. Faishal. Mr. Faishal.
Yeah, I have two short notes, comments.
Yeah.
First for Marzia.
Excuse me, Faishal. I would like to submit something. Actually, today is the death anniversary of one of the great scholar of India, Professor Sri Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay ji. The university is going to organize a program on his memory, and I'm the one of the coordinator of this program. So I don't want to leave this, but I have to leave to join that program.
No problem. So and give my regard to Professor Sanjeev Sharma.
Sure, sir.
Okay. Thank you. All the best.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay. First for Marzia about ASEAN. ASEAN basically stand on the concept, principle or derived from concept of village neighborhood.
Yes.
This means that if you want to live in peace, you should never interfere in domestic affairs. That's very simple. Even politically, ASEAN countries do not have brutal history of the invasion of ancient kingdom. Because my bachelor is in history, I read a little bit about the invasion in the Southeast Asia region, evenly came from outside, such as Mongolia, Kola Mandala in Ceylon, and of course, Japanese occupation and European colonialism. And economically, regional integration is very different if comparing with such as the European Union. So it will be difficult to achieve because the achievements are not equal, and there is no common umbrella value in ASEAN. But in European Union, as long as I read and hear from the hymn of European Union during my stay in Germany for at least 5.5 years, and all the Anti-Freunde, Europa is Tochter aus Elysium. So you have a common platform, common value, brotherhood, and etc. So that's your European Union value. But now I don't know about the future of European Union after United Kingdom leaving European Union. That's my short reply about why ASEAN is different with another member, for example, in the Middle East and also in Africa. And for Yin, I have a short question. China now is going to develop into the dominant world power. But I'm very interested about the concept of mentality, as you said. This mentality has an impact, especially on me, for example, as outsider from China, related to the China's policy. The China state is more aggressive now. If I see their policy toward Hong Kong and Taiwan and the expansion they undertook to gain superiority in the South China Sea. What's your opinion about that? Thank you.
If I can be absolutely open about it, I don't think that China is becoming more and more aggressive now. It is the same case like in the 1960s. If we read the 1960s newspaper, China was facing equally challenging global media sort of challenge, like criticism coming from the Soviet side, the Warsaw Pact, criticism coming from the United States, calling China of breaking the peace détente. And it was the same in the 1950s. China, when fighting the Korean War, China was criticized of violating the peace treaty. For goodness sake, no. I would say if someone come over to your door and slap your face, would you respond? I would argue that peace cannot come without a price. We need to safeguard the peace. And it is precisely the idea that the vulnerable people should stand up for ourselves against the bully that protects the vulnerable people, not by seeking void a truce or peace that is sanctioned by the powerful. It is only the powerful that suggests that we should have peace rather than the weak people, right? So safeguarding and protecting peace is always China, the intention of China, and has not cannot be considered as sort of the Chinese aggressiveness towards the outside world. Why? Look at what was under dispute now. The issue of Hong Kong. In order to establish a stable society and a stable state, whereas you cannot possibly have a country within a country that is subject to foreign intervention. Look at all those CIA's movements in Hong Kong and areas like Hong Kong. And it is not just about Hong Kong. We have potholes of foreign interventions like safe havens across the world. Predominantly, almost all of them are in the third world countries. There is no single city in USA, in the UK, in the USA, or any of the major European countries that has a city that allows foreign free movement of foreign agents. This is ridiculous. What's wrong with taking back control of a city that should be fully decolonized? And this is, I would say, part of the decolonization movement. And also with regarding Taiwan, that's even more preposterous. We allow the existence of the lingering legacy, the lingering problems of the Cold War last until today in two areas, predominantly in Asia, Korea and China. We still have a split Korea. We still have a split China, whereas everybody is criticizing China's initiative of reuniting with Taiwan, and everybody is criticizing North Korea of breaching the truth.
Mr.
Okay?
Yin, Mr.
Yes.
Yin, I would like to have your comment on the Chinese activities in Southeast China Sea.
Yes, it's a great topic. And South China Sea is a thorny issue in China. But finally, China proposed the idea of let's talk about this within the framework of Asia rather than have foreign intervention. Now, the foreign intervention nowadays has even pushing the area into a more dangerous territory. The coming of the US aircraft carriers, the coming of French and British, the announcement of the French and British aircraft carriers roaming around in South China Sea, it leaves us no ground of discussing and negotiating and talking about, forget about all those sort of sovereign issue of all those thorny issue. Let's co-develop this area and use this development, use this economic advancement in the coming out from this area to reject back to the areas in this region, rather than using this as an excuse to invite foreign intervention. And it is the foreign intervention that is going to push the world into the war zone.
But Mr. Yin, but the problem now is that while on one hand asking for dialogue, including with some ASEAN countries, especially Vietnam and Malaysia and the Philippines, but on the other hand, at the same time, the Chinese military has already built facilities in the islands of the problem. That some countries afraid on that.
Of course, I mean, but historically speaking, have we ever witnessed the Chinese military aggression in the area? And historically speaking, China also involved in North Korea, sending out military troops to North Korea. But did China stay there? China was also involved in a military border conflict with India, and Chinese military prevailed all the way to close to New Delhi. Did China stay there in the conflicting area? The idea is about to safeguard the area. The idea is to safeguard the Chinese territory by doing all those preemptive moves. Of course, if one day China moves on a war path, China uses this for aggressive purposes, and we, the Chinese people, the Chinese intellectuals, will be the first ones standing up, fighting against the Chinese path of moving towards the more sort of a monopolized, capitalist and imperialist country. So far, I think we do need to give the Chinese actions a sort of a benefit of the doubt at the moment. At least this, particularly during this moment, the increasing foreign interventions, military intervention in the area, if we don't give China the benefit of the doubt, we'll be committing the mistakes that many of the 13 Asian countries did in 1950 with regarding the Korean conflict. The 13 countries at the time united together and called China to cease fire first and then discuss and conduct a peaceful negotiation with the states. Whereas at the same time, China has already experienced the atrocity when the US was broken peace between the civil war between Chinese Communist Party and the Nationalist Party. They convinced China to stand down and cease the Communist Party to stand down and cease fire. But at the same time, they militarily fund the Nationalist Party for the hope that the Nationalist Party will come back and reconquer the entire country. It has been done repeatedly. So the Chinese experience is that you cannot achieve a peace by simply talking about peace. You need to show the bullies that we are able to defend ourselves, and then we can talk about peace. So if the 1950s Korean War, if China did stand down because of the pressure of the 13 Asian countries, then there will be no China today. There will be no peaceful Asia. Asia will become another Africa or another Middle East, which is in turmoil.
Thank you, In, for your
Hello.
articulated. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yin, according to your opinion, why didn't China PRC just let Taiwan become the sovereign state they wanted when they left mainland?
They can't even fight a cannon to mainland. For God's sake!
Yeah, it's a very, very, very long-term problem, like Israel.
Precisely.
Like Israel, Palestine.
And if you allow me, many of the anti-Chinese propaganda, all those racism rhetoric, many of them actually came from Taiwan. This is our decolonization problem. This is our domestic decolonization problem. We need to decolonize our country as well. It's not only Taiwan problem, it's the mainland China problem. Many of the anti-Chinese rhetoric came from mainland China as well. It is the problem of decolonization, not the problem of a communist party.
Thank you. I think that the time has come and time is over. So we can wind up to this particular session. And I want to talk to you, Marzia, also, because you are combining the other session, which starts from 2 p.m. The Paris time.
Actually, Professor Anwar is there, and Professor Anwar was supposed to speak at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Professor Anwar, are you hearing?
Hello.
Welcome.
Good afternoon or good evening. I don't know what time is it there, but everybody.
It's 12 p.m. in Paris. 12 p.m. in Paris. And
okay.
It's
so
almost afternoon.
I missed Dr. Marzia. Actually, I mixed up the timing, and I prepared my paper, and I thought it will be like 15:45 Pakistani time, and it was French time. So I missed that. Otherwise, I prepared my presentation in my paper. So this was the situation. And Professor Nisar Ul-Haq, I wanted to just to talk to you, to see you and Dr. Marzia and other scholars from Palestine and other regions, but unfortunately I missed that. I thought it will be at like South Asian 15:45, and it was French. So now in Pakistan it is 15:45. So Dr. Marzia, this was something, it was no doubt my fault, but I missed my presentation.
No, you didn't miss any presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are Eurocentric as far as time is concerned. So I perhaps didn't specify that it was 3:45 French time, Central European time. So you didn't miss anything. I just recombined the 2 afternoon sessions because we have less speakers. So I propose to merge session 5 and session 6.
Yeah.
Also because I should co-chair another session at 2. So my proposal is to have only one afternoon session at 3:45 European time, French time, if you agree, Professor Anwar. And
Dr. Marzia, you mean that still I have time to present my paper?
Yes.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
But the time would be 3:45 of the
It's
Paris time.
3:45.
Of the
3:45
Paris time.
means that in Pakistan, what is the
We don't
time
know
difference?
that what would be the time in Pakistan, but
It's Pakistan now. It's
about
6.
7.
yeah, I
It's
don't know,
about-
but you have to calculate it. 3:45 Paris time,
How many
3:45
hours?
French time. Yeah,
It should be 3 hours.
it should be, I think, 3.5 hours.
Dr. Marzia, may I know like at what time, from now onward, at what time my presentation will be? Because it's like in Pakistan now it's like 4 p.m. or 16.
Yes, in Pakistan you have 3.5 hours forward, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it
So-
will be almost 3:45 and 3.5 hours, which
It will
means
be
7:30, something
7.
like that.
It will be, if it's 3:45 in France and Italy is 6:45. It's 7:15.
It's a 4-hour difference from France.
4 or 3.5.
I think 4, yeah, 3.5 or
4.
4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4.
around that, 4.
4.
4.
So
So
if
it
is
means
4,
7:45 or 7:30.
yeah, 7:30 for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
7:30 for me and 7:45 for Pakistan. Is it okay, Zahid Sahab?
Professor
Hello.
Anwar.
Hello, Marzia and Professor Nisar Ul-Haq. I just devoted my time until 6 Indonesian time. It means 7 minutes again. I should be
Okay.
leaving this room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for intervening and for your interesting presentation and very stimulating, according to me. By the way, my question about ASEAN was provocative. I know the difference between ASEAN and the European Union. I still think that economically speaking, and ASEAN is still much more effective than European Union. We have too many theoretical values that on the at the practical level are not effective, especially from the political point of view. We don't have a common foreign policy, for instance. So we have the European Union is very ambitious, but I mean, its goals are very ambitious, but from the practical point of view, I think it's not very effective, especially from the foreign policy point of view. From common defense, common foreign policy is very weak, and that's.
I think Professor Marzia, I think one difference between EU and ASEAN is that ASEAN is not binded; it's very free. So
ASEAN is informal, but it doesn't have the hypocrisy. European Union, obviously, we are members of the European Union, and we cannot escape it.
That's
right
why
now.
If you are free,
it's a lot of hypocrisy.
So more free become less problems because no one will tell you, hey, you have problem. You have to solve your problem. Otherwise, you must out from the group. No, it's not ASEAN. So look at what happened with Myanmar. We keep silence because we promised in the beginning no intervention. Yeah, okay, so no problem with the ASEAN. But in EU, you are very strict rules. You have to follow the rules. Then, because that's why many problems if you violate the rules, something like that.
Well, in Europe, we don't have anything like Myanmar, but we have a very, very strong right-wing movements.
Yeah,
and,
I agree. Yeah, that's why.
Racist organizations like the Northern League in Italy.
Especially because, for instance, in economic areas, you have so many coordination rules among members with respect to monetary policy and so on, while we have nothing on that in ASEAN. So that's why the problem is very less. So we
Anyway.
like a club. Yeah.
Anyway,
like
we
a
have
club that's meeting every year and then laughing and then drinking and then talking and then okay, see you next year again.
no. I hope to see you earlier than next year, Toulouse. I hope to see you in the afternoon.
No, I mean ASEAN. ASEAN is like
Okay,
annual meeting,
sorry.
but just talking and then laughing and then signing and then nothing happened. No problem. And then see you next year again.
Well, it's a different. It's a completely different approach. Shall we see each other in the afternoon also? Or will you be there in the afternoon?
Yeah, we will be able to come on 3:45 as you said, because you have already combined the session.
Yeah. But what about you, In? Will you be there or are you leaving us?
No, I will try.
No, I'm talking to In Zhiguang.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there briefly because I have this childcare obligation. So I need to pick her up and celebrate Chinese New Year.
Happy Chinese New Year, Zin.
Thank you. This is my parental duty to give her that holiday feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, the great holiday. We call Imlek. Yeah.
Oh, Imlek, yes.
Imlek, yeah. In Indonesia, we call Imlek. And a national holiday.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
We could have a national holiday as well.
Oh, good.
Okay.
It's nice to have so many holidays across the world.
So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
At the end, we just used the 2 hours. It was a very, very interesting discussion also. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.